Good morning and welcome to our February Readers Theater performance. Valentine's Day is this coming Sunday, and that is the theme of our performance today. I want to welcome so many of you who have joined us this morning. It's just wonderful to have you participate in this performance. The characters in our stories today are about caring for others, about being kind, and expressing their love and concern for others in various ways. In our first story, we revisit Farmer Brown's farm. Some of the characters like Duck and Chicken and the cows and Farmer Brown are familiar to us. However, in this story, we are introduced to the sheep, the mice, the pigs, and the fox. So let's take a trip to Farmer Brown's farm and see how they're getting ready for the big Valentine's Day party.
Click, clack, moo. I Love You by Doreen Cronin and Betsy Lewin.
It's Valentine's Day on the farm, but there's work to be done before the big dance.
To keep the pigs healthy, Farmer Brown cleans the pig pen. To keep the donkeys happy, Farmer Brown stocks the stable. To keep the animals safe from foxes and raccoons, Farmer Brown mends the fence.
Little Duck worked hard too. She was busy decorating the barn and the farmyard for the big dance. She tied balloons to everything. She hung streamers from everything. She hung sparkling lights between everything. She made hearts out of anything she could find. When Little Duck was finished, there was paint on her face, glitter in her wings, and a valentine for everyone that evening.
Little Duck greeted each guest at the door. Quack, quack, quack.
The chickens were the first to arrive.
Duck handed everyone a valentine.
The chickens handed Little Duck a casserole.
The pigs arrived next.
Quack, quack, quack. Little Duck handed each pig a valentine.
The pigs handed Little Duck chips and salsa.
The sheep arrived fashionably late.
Quack, quack. Little Duck handed each sheep a valentine.
The sheep headed right for the salsa and chips.
Cows had a more formal affair and were out for the evening. They posted a notice in the barn. It read, "Join us for the second annual Divine Bovine Ball. Formal attire, please."
When the music came on, the chickens danced with the chickens.
The pigs danced with the pigs.
The sheep danced with the sheep.
The mice did the hustle.
On the other side of the fence, at the top of the hill, a little fox heard the music. She perked up her ears and she called, "Yip, yip, yip."
Nobody answered, but there were streamers in the trees.
Little fox climbed down the hill. She called, "Yip, yip, yip."
Again, nobody answered, but there were balloons to lead the way.
Little fox trotted down to the fence, which was decorated with streamers, glitter, balloons, and lights. She called, "Yip, yip, yip."
Nobody answered, but there was a trail of hearts to follow.
So Little Fox dug a hole under the fence and followed the trail. Little Fox arrived at the barn, covered in streamers. She called, "Yip, yip, yip."
Everyone knew it was the fox, and they were very scared.
The chickens stopped dancing.
The pigs stopped dancing.
The sheep stopped dancing.
The mice hustled right into the hay.
Little Fox called again. Yip, yip, yip.
Little Duck was not scared. She greeted the new guest. Quack, quack, quack. She handed Little Fox her last valentine.
Little Fox handed her a valentine right back. Yip, yip, yip.
Quack, quack, quack. Little Duck turned up the music.
Little Duck danced with Little Fox. Yip, quack, yip, quack, yip, quack, quack.
The chickens danced with the sheep.
The pigs danced with the chickens.
And the mice kept right on hustling.
Farmer Brown joined the party and he danced too. Everybody danced with everybody until
The cows
Cows
came home.
Well, I hope you enjoyed visiting all the animals and Farmer Brown on his farm. Our next presentation is about a man who is trying to send a message to his Valentine. However, he encounters many problems and he is not having much luck in getting that message to his Valentine. Instead of reading this story to you, some of us will sing it for you. So I hope you enjoy listening to the song.
The Ballad of Valentine by Allison Jackson.
In a cabin in a canyon near a mountain laced with pine lived a girl who was my sweetheart, and her name was Valentine.
Oh, my darling, oh, my darling, oh, my darling Valentine. I have written 40 letters, but you've never read a line.
Gave your letter to a mailman to deliver rain or shine, but he couldn't find your address, so I penned this Valentine.
then I trained a homing pigeon and attached my note with twine. But he flew to Madagascar where he dropped your Valentine.
So I built a raging bonfire, sent a black and smoky rhyme. But a cyclone stole a message and it vanished one more time.
Next, I tapped a note in Morse code asking you to please be mine. But the signal hit a blizzard and it crossed the county line.
Then I rented out a rail car on the Western Railroad line, but the train derailed in Denver, leaving letters strewn behind.
Paid a rider on a pony, but his fill he wouldn't mind. Talked him clear to Arizona, where he's now been reassigned.
Bought an airplane, wrote a message with a big heart underlined, but the wind erased 3 letters, and now you are my Alanine.
Tied my message to a boulder with a sentimental rhyme, but it rolled down into quicksand. Now your Valentine is slime.
Well, I'm not much of a writer, but I tried to drop a line. If you ever get this message, will you be my Valentine?
Oh, my darling, oh, my darling, oh, my darling Valentine. I've written 40 letters and you've never read a line.
Wasn't that lovely? Well, I hope you don't encounter those problems sending your Valentine a message. Our next story is about a neighborhood where people care about each other. The main character is Mr. Hatch. Mr. Hatch gets a surprise package in the mail on Valentine's Day. This makes him very happy. However, Mr. Hatch can't imagine who sent him this Valentine. So let's listen to this wonderful story about a neighborhood and the people in the neighborhood who are caring, kind, and loving to each other.
Somebody Loves You, Mr. Hatch by Eileen Spinelli.
Mr. Hatch was tall and thin, and he did not smile. Every morning at 6:30 sharp, he would leave his brick house and walk 8 blocks to the shoelace factory where he worked. At lunchtime, he would sit alone in a corner, eat his cheese and mustard sandwich, and drink a cup of coffee. Sometimes he brought a prune for dessert. After work, he would stop at the newsstand to get the paper, and then he would stop at the grocery store to buy a fresh turkey wing for his supper. After supper, he read the paper, took a shower, and went to bed early.
He keeps to himself.
That is what everyone said about Mr. Hatch.
One Saturday, when Mr. Hatch stepped onto the porch with his dustpan and broom, he got a big surprise.
The postman handed Mr. Hatch a package wrapped in brown paper.
He had never spoken to the postman before, but today he said,
Thank you, Mr. Goober.
Mr. Goober smiled and said,
You're welcome. I always enjoy delivering packages.
Mr. Hatch tore the brown paper from the box. Inside was a white box, which he opened to find another box. This one was heart-shaped, all satiny red and pink with a pink bow on top. It was filled with candy. Then something fluttered to the porch floor. It was a white card. He picked it up. It said,
Somebody loves you.
Only then did he remember that it was Valentine's Day. Mr. Hatch wondered and wondered.
Who would send this to me?
He was all alone. He had no friends, and yet someone had sent him a Valentine.
Who? Who?
He put the box on the coffee table and tried to do some dusting. But every time he left the room, he had to keep peeking to see if the box was still there. He dusted and dusted.
and the dust cloth seemed to whisper.
Somebody loves you. Somebody loves you.
At last, he flung the dust cloth away and exclaimed,
Why, I've got a secret admirer.
and then he did something he had never done before. He laughed. He laughed and danced and clapped his hands. And then he took a piece of candy from the box and ate it. Mr. Hatch changed his shirt and found some old aftershave in the bottom drawer. He splashed some on his face. He picked out a yellow tie with blue polka dots and put it on, and then he went for a walk. He thought,
Maybe I will meet the person who sent me the candy.
Of course, no one had ever seen Mr. Hatch wearing a tie or smelling of aftershave or smiling, so he got a lot of attention.
Mrs. Weed tripped over her dog.
Mr. Dunwoody nearly fell off his ladder.
Little Tina Finn spilled all of the toys out of her wagon.
Mr. Hatch waved hello to all of them. On Monday, it was back to work. At lunchtime, Mr. Hatch sat in the middle of the cafeteria. He spoke to everyone and passed out chocolates from his heart box. On the way home, as usual, he stopped at the newsstand.
Mr. Smith handed him the usual newspaper.
I think I'll have a pack of mints.
Said Mr. Hatch, not as usual.
Mr. Smith was shocked.
Was that you speaking, Mr. Hatch?
Indeed it was. I said I would also like a pack of mints. And if you don't mind my saying so, Mr. Smith, you don't look very well today.
You're right. I don't feel very...
Mr. Smith recovered from his shock to reply.
You're right. I don't feel very well. I have a cold. I was supposed to go to the doctor this afternoon, but the stand has been so busy, I haven't had the time to go.
Mr. Hatch, why? I'd be happy to watch the stand for you while you go.
Mr. Smith could hardly believe his ears.
You would?
Certainly. Just show me what to do.
And so Mr. Hatch ran the newsstand for an hour. He wondered if any of the women who stopped by to buy a paper or a magazine or a candy bar had sent him the mysterious valentine. When Mr. Smith returned, Mr. Hatch made his usual stop at the grocery store. He said to Mr. Todd, the grocer,
I'm a little tired of turkey wings. I think I'll have a nice, fresh slice of ham.
Mr. Todd weighed the meat and wrapped it.
You look worried, Mr. Todd.
I am. My little girl is late. She hasn't come home from school yet, and I can't leave the store to look for her until my wife arrives.
Goodness, why didn't you say so? I'll go look for her.
and so he walked to school and found little Melanie Todd by the swings and brought her home.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hatch.
Anytime.
After supper, Mr. Hatch did not bother to read the paper. He decided to bake brownies instead. It would be nice to have brownies to share the next day with the people at the shoelace factory. As he baked, the warm chocolate smell of brownies floated through the neighborhood. Children gathered around Mr. Hatch's house, sniffing the air.
Well, I suppose the factory can wait,
said Mr. Hatch as he looked out the window, and he brought out 2 plates full of brownies.
Now, what are brownies without lemonade?
And he stirred up a nice cold pitcher of lemonade and shared it with the children.
When the parents came to gather the children, they had some brownies too. It turned out to be a picnic in Mr. Hatch's backyard.
He dusted off an old harmonica and played songs he remembered from boyhood.
Everyone danced.
And so the days and weeks went by. When Mr. Hatch wasn't smiling, he was laughing. And when he wasn't laughing, he was helping someone. And when he wasn't helping someone, he was having a party in his yard or on his porch. He seemed to have forgotten about finding the person who sent him the valentine.
Then one afternoon, Mr. Google, the postman, came to his door. He had a very serious look on his face.
Come in, Mr. Goober. You look upset.
I am upset. I made a mistake some time ago. On Valentine, my supervisor is very angry with me. Do you?
Yes, Mr. Goober. What is it?
Do you recall the package I delivered to you? On Valentine's Day, I think it was.
Yes, I believe so.
I don't suppose you still have it.
As a matter of fact, I still have the box. The candy's gone. Why do you ask?
I'm afraid I delivered it to the wrong address. It was supposed to go to another house.
Mr. Hatch recalled tearing off the brown paper. It had never occurred to him to look at the address. He fetched the heart-shaped box and the pink bow and gave them to the postman.
I hope your supervisor won't be angry with you now.
Mr. Goober was heading down the sidewalk when Mr. Hatch called from his porch.
Mr. Goober, I forgot something.
And he gave the postman the little white card that read, "Somebody loves you." Alone in his living room, Mr. Hatch sighed.
Nobody loves me after all.
Then he read the paper, took his shower, and went to bed early. The next morning at 6:30 sharp, Mr. Hatch left his brick house and walked 8 blocks to the shoelace factory. At lunchtime, he sat in the corner by himself, ate his cheese and mustard sandwich, and drank a cup of coffee. After work, he stopped at the newsstand for his paper, but he did not speak to Mr. Smith. And when he ordered his turkey wing from Mr. Todd, he did not smile. Nor did he pat little Melanie Todd on the head, or bake brownies, or have picnics, or play his old harmonica anymore.
Everyone whispered.
What is wrong with Mr. Hatch?
Mr. Goober, the postman, told them what had happened.
We love Mr. Hatch. He gave us flowers for our garden. He helped us mend our back fence.
I love him too. He saved his bones for my dog Ruffy. Ruffy loves Mr. Hatch too.
Mr. Smith told everyone how Mr. Hatch had watched his newsstand so he could visit the doctor. Mr. Todd told everyone how Mr. Hatch had found his little girl. All the children in the neighborhood remembered Mr. Hatch's wonderful brownies and lemonade, and most of all his laughter.
Poor Mr. Hatch, what can we do?
Wait, I have an idea.
On Saturday morning, Mr. Hatch woke to a bright and sunny day. He put on his old overalls and went out to the porch with his dustpan and broom. He couldn't believe his eyes.
All over the porch were red and white hats and pink bows. There were candy boxes on the chairs and yellow streamers flowing from the ceiling. And sticking up out of his mailbox was a new, shiny, silver harmonica. The front yard was filled with people, happy, smiling people. They were holding up a huge pink sign with hand-painted letters. It said,
Everybody loves you, Mr. Hatch.
Mr. Hatch dabbed a tear with his handkerchief.
I do believe somebody loves me after all.
And then he smiled. And then he laughed.
Ha ha ha!
And then he hurried down to be with his friends.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that story about Mr. Hatch and the neighborhood. Our last story today is about hugs. During this pandemic, we have not been able to hug our family members and our friends the way we did before. Maybe some of you are now giving virtual hugs or fist bumps or shoulder bumps to let people know we care. So now let's listen to the many different kinds of hugs we can give each other. And maybe there are kinds of hugs that we don't mention, a type of hug that you're using now during this pandemic.
The Hug Book by Sue Flees.
Under covers, nice and snug, ready for a morning hug?
Mom hugs, dad hugs, no such thing as bad hugs.
Old hugs, new hugs. Nice to see you too. hugs.
Greet hugs, sweet hugs, sweep you off your feet hugs.
Leg hugs, shy hugs. Thanks for stopping by hugs.
Why hugs? Cry hugs. Hard to say goodbye hugs.
Hugs are special.
Hugs are free.
Will you share a hug with me?
5 hugs. 10 hugs. Welcome home again, hugs.
Big hugs, tall hugs, travel down the hall hugs.
Good hugs. Night hugs. Tuck you in tight hugs.
Read a story hugs.
Count your sheep.
One last hug before you sleep.
Thank you. We hope you enjoyed today's performance. And as in traditional theater where the actors take 3 bows, we would like to take 3 bows at this time. And while we cannot hear your applause, we feel them in our hearts and in our minds. I would like to now introduce our readers. I am Miss Lila. We have Mr. Sal, Mr. David, Miss Kate, Miss Betsy, Mr. John, Miss Kathy, Miss Zelma, Mr. Don, and Mr. Stephen. This concludes our performance for today. I hope you have a wonderful Valentine's Day, one that is a very special day filled with love, kindness, and caring. So we hope to see you again sometime in the future. Bye-bye.
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 Bye.
Say bye-bye.